need to move on. I want to move on to another subject because I got to get your take on this. So right here, Russia says it won't have to defend Iran for a win, but then you get this article also. Russia warns against attacking Iran. It's illegal and it's unacceptable. Now, this article is in relation to the deal signed between, oh, where is it? Where is it? I thought I had it up. Okay, basically the ratification of the deal between Moscow and Tehran. What's interesting, at the bottom of it, it's an agreement that deals with security, economics, etc., like pretty much everything across the board. And it points out, okay, well, Russia doesn't have to defend Tehran, but that's not really saying that they won't if Tehran is attacked, especially given the significance of Iran for Russian security, and for that matter, even for Chinese security. So how far do you think Russia would go if Tehran is Iran is attacked? Because I guess there are two questions in this, right? What would that attack be? And also this notion of any kind of quote unquote negotiations that are taking place in Oman over the weekend. Okay, well, initially Iran said they're not going to have negotiations, or at the very least direct negotiations. But some of the reporting pointed out that, okay, they'll talk for a few hours, and if those talks go well, then they would have direct negotiations. Now, indirect, direct, I don't think that big difference between those two things, so fair enough. But I guess my interest is, I get the sense that what Donald Trump wants is to be able to get not just the nuclear program, but the ballistic missile program. Netanyahu, when he came out of the meeting, he came out and said something to the effect of the Libyan option, which is explosive to anybody who knows what that means. You know, Gaddafi wants nukes. Gaddafi decides to give up those nukes. Gaddafi gets sodomized with a machete by a bunch of jihadists that we effectually was pushing in order to take over Libya. Libya becomes a basket case of a country where they're selling black people for $400, basically for cheaper than a car. And so for Netanyahu to say, yeah, I talked to Donald Trump, we agree that Iran is going to have to effectively go with the Libyan option of blowing up their stockpile. Now that is pretty astonishing. That is pretty astonishing. Considering Iran is a strategic ally, how far do you think Russia would go to defend it if indeed Donald Trump is not bluffing and actually attacks Iran?
Well, we have to look at the text of the strategic treaty that they signed and ratified. Was ratified a few days ago. As far as security guarantees are concerned, indeed, there is no mention of direct military intervention by Russia in order to help Iran, were Iran be the subject of an aggression. Yes. This being said, there are mentions, explicit mention of all kind of equipments. So this could be, you know, anti-missile ballistic system. It could be a radar. It could be a whole range of things, which basically would make this endeavor to take out Iran's nuclear installation a complete, you know, suicidal venture. I mean, that's the idea, is to provide Russian tech on top of Iranian tech, which is not bad on its own. I mean, let's recall that in 2013, Iran actually bought S-300s from Russia. But since at the time there were negotiations, there was a lot of pressure in Moscow by American diplomats to put the brakes on this transaction. Iran went on and developed their own domestic version of the S-300, which is the Bavar 373, and it works very well. So we saw at the same time the pinpoint accuracy of Iran's ballistics a year ago during Operation True Promise 2, which basically did not even occasion the loss of one civilian, except for one Palestinian who, unfortunately, wrong place, wrong time, was, you know, received a debris of missile on himself, but otherwise it was a quite impressive display. So imagine if the Russians are providing them additional gears, which we don't know anything about, because obviously the treaty does not specify what kind of, but it says provide assistance, military assistance, maybe, or in terms of equipment, in terms of logistics, in terms. So that should be on its face enough. I don't think Iran needs the Russian army, and Russia has no interest in overstretching itself.
Right.
That's the bottom line. So, but yeah, you add to this the diplomatic cover, at the Security Council, and they can put people on the ground to build those nuclear plants, to provide nuclear know-how, make so that the civil program is completely under Russian supervision, and that thereby there's no reason to worry.
By the way, that was also
Uh,
in the deal.
yeah,
Nuclear, that was
exactly.
the buzzword that I saw when I was reading
Yes.
through it. And it was like nuclear, nuclear energy for the civilian usage, etc.
So no, I don't think there's any reason for Russia to be militarily involved, directly involved. There's Iran as the gears, and now with this treaty, this strategic treaty, they can avail themselves of a lot more gears, essentially. But the second point I want to make is going back to this idea that yes, the Libyan option would be the only one acceptable. Well, I think he was talking more to his domestic audience, because I get the feeling that this meeting in Washington, some people say it was actually a play, but I have the feeling it did not quite go as he expected it,
Mhm.
in terms of commitment. Because again, and we had that conversation last time, that Trump is yes, he's a very cynical politician, but he's not irrational. He's not going to shoot himself in the foot on behalf of their proxy in the Middle East.
He is
Especially if
initiating,
he,
well, just be clear, he's initiating a trade war against the world. The dollar.
yeah, right.
Like,
Well, I mean, the trade issue, that's economics. I don't understand. I don't feel like he understands the ramification as far as economics. I think he convinced himself he can just turn a light switch on and it will produce X effect or Y effect. When in fact it doesn't work. Economics is anything but an exact science.
yeah.
But as far as boasting on a military level, it's one thing to be doing the boasting, and then you can sugarcoat the whole thing by saying, we had those discussions, they got my message, and everything is copacetic again. And you cannot blame me because I got, your security interest at heart.
Mhm.
Because make no mistake about it, the Iranians are not naive. They know very well that what the Israeli wants is not any of the three, aspect, whether it's the monitoring of the enriched uranium, or the ballistic missile, or the alleged support to ideologically linked militia in the region. What Tel Aviv wants is a regime change in Tehran.
Right.
Nothing short of that will do. So once this is the predicated premise, this is where everything stands on hinges on. Why would Iran start sitting down and negotiate when, as you rightly pointed out, I mean, look, this did not quite work out the way Colonel Gaddafi expected,
Right.
or Saddam Hussein, or Assad for that matter. I mean, they were still doing this shenanigan last week, a few days ago, saying that they're looking for those chemical installations in Syria. Those chemical installations were dismantled back in 2013.
Yeah.
It's just, it makes no sense. But we're dealing with people who basically are not trustworthy. What they want is they want to take you out. They want to take you out. The only person with whom this trend was bucked was with North Korea. So we had the usual back in 2017, the usual Trump boasting and this uncouth way of addressing a foreign head of state,
Rocket
trying
Man.
to trying to mark his territory in a way like a pissing contest. But in the end, once the knowledgeable people in his own circles told him, well, there's only that much we can do with this guy. He's got the nukes. That's it. So for Iran, I mean, the equation is very simple. Uh, be legalistic about things in a way that you cannot be pointed out as you're trying at all costs to get the nukes. Rely on your allies, but whatever direction that the negotiation heads into, make sure that push comes to shove, if somebody starts acting irrationally, you provide yourself with the ability to turn around in a second and get parity as far as strategic weapons.
One catch:
That's my take.
Israel is a wild card. Meaning, even if you think Trump is not suicidal, which I don't know that to be true, to be honest, and sometimes politicians can walk themselves in a corner with their language. You have 2 months. Okay, what happens if those 2 months come up and Iran says, F off? Then what? Okay, now you're forced either look bad in a credibility sense or act in some way. And that has nothing to do with Israel, who may say, we are going to attack Iran in order to drag the United States into the war. There was a report that came out that made the point of saying that the Biden administration thought Israel was going to go on a murder spree for a few weeks. And Netanyahu effectively expanded it out for over a year. And the Biden administration effectively went along for the ride. Why wouldn't that be Trump also? Trump has been completely obsequious to any and everything that Israel has wanted, even going so far as to say the ambulance and the paramedics who were murdered with their arms behind their back, it was Hamas's fault. Like, that's so outrageous, right? That is so insulting. Just tell me you don't care that it happened. Don't tell me. It's almost like
Sure.
they shot and buried themselves. Okay, dude, stop. But I'm saying, if you have a government that's that in the tank for Israel, if Israel attacks, Trump will go along with it. At least I think so. Correct me if I'm wrong. And this could be the last question, but I'm curious about your thoughts on this.
Well, we never know what goes on in the mind of some leaders, especially those like Netanyahu, who is politically in the corner in his own country. I mean, let's make no mistake about it. Israel is on the brink of civil war right now. Not over the fate of the Palestinians, but because the guy is basically taken over the whole government and personalized it for himself. He doesn't want to face the music in court for some of the corruption cases that have been opened against him. Out of 18 convocations, he only replied to 3 of them, and every time he's on the verge of running out of options and having to again answer to some of the allegations, he violates a ceasefire. So to be sure, not unlike Zelensky, Bibi Netanyahu has every incentive to open new fronts and escalate situations and violate ceasefires.
Exactly.
That's par for the course. At the same time, if we recall, a precedent was in 2007, 2008. That was the last time we were that close, from what I understand, to see. And at the time, Iran was not what Iran is today, mind you. There was Admiral Fallon was the chief of staff at the time, and he said, "There's no way we're going into Iran." At the time, we had Cheney was essentially running foreign policy in West Asia for the U.S. Not even Bush Jr. Dick Cheney, Darth Vader. So, and Dick Cheney was a complete neocon. I mean, all the way full tilt on board with this. 7 countries in 5 years.
Yeah.
In the end, that did not do it. That did not do it, because they ran those simulation game, and they realized that engaging the Iranians in an open conflict in the Persian Gulf alone, involving the 7th Fleet, would lead to 12 to 15 U.S. aircraft carriers sunk.
Wow.
And I'm talking just about yes, the Blues against the Reds, and every time the Blues lost. So imagine today. Now you have also all those U.S. allies in the region, all those Gulf monarchies. They don't want to get subjected to a rain of ballistic missiles from Iran. And Iran has been very clear. Anybody who somehow remotely provides logistics for an assault against us will pay the price. We won't even discriminate. So there's going to be a lot of people, if we get to that point again, there's going to be a lot of people probably on the inside in the military circles. The only problem is this guy who's SecDef, the
Except,
DOD. Yeah, this guy is a Christian fundamentalist nutcase. You have to, yeah. He's they chose him. They chose him because of that psychological profile. He's a crazy bastard.
Yeah.
He reminds me actually of a guy 20 years ago who was identified. Forgot his name, but he was a general. He said his name was Jay Gardner, I think. Anyway, he
Okay.
was identified. He used to say, "My God is stronger than your God." He was one of those first expression, manifestation of Christian dispensation doctrine into the U.S. military. But now, at the very top of the department, we have someone who thinks like this, who puts tattoos on himself, harkening back to the Crusades. I mean,
Hmm.
the guy is a nutcase.
My God is stronger than
That's
your God.
something I would be more worried about.
I mean, he filled his administration with people like that, though. I mean, what is the guy, the one that ran
Sure.
for president?
Huckabee,
Huckabee. Thank you. Yeah,
the ambassador to Israel.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, he thinks
get it.
that Jesus is going to return once they do something in Israel. So these are the people that he filled his administration with. These people are pro-Zionist more than the people who live in Israel. Like, it's terrifying. And I guess my thing
Well,
is,
they're pro-Zionist only in as far as it serves their religious doctrine, which is basically to force the Jewish people to convert to Christianity. Because when you bring on, Armageddon, then the great rapture, blah blah blah, then there's nuclear fire consumes everything, and then Christ reappears, and they
uh-huh.
have no choice but to abandon their false belief and convert and accept him as their savior. This is how those people think. So they don't care about the Zionists. The Zionists are a means to an end.
But see, that's
What
my
end?
point. These are the people who Donald Trump has filled his administration with, right? And it's whispering in his ear. And so it's like, okay, these people are lunatics. Like they're like full blown psychological
Yeah.
cases. And yet he's head of the DOD of
Mm-hmm.
$1 trillion, according to Trump, military
Well, that's
organization.
official now, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Arno, man, I've appreciated this conversation deeply. I really have. By the way, so you believe Trump is bluffing? Just to be clear.
He's a con man, so anything is possible from him. Yeah, and we didn't get the chance to talk about tariffs today, but our next conversation we can touch on it. I'm very pessimistic about this attempt to reindustrialize the U.S. through this tariff policy. We will get to explore why I think that, but the problem
Well,
is what defines the man is uncertainty. And if you're a business owner and you have cost, you have to make sure that you think strategically as far as your business is concerned. You never know what this guy is going to say from one day to the next. So assuming that the plan is to bring back jobs and factories into the US, and you decide to do so, it's very expensive. You will have to pay to increase the wages to be sure, because I don't know where you are operating from at this point, but to going back to the US, there's going to be a added volume in wage payments.
mhm.
So you're going to do all this, and for all I know, 3 years down the road, this whole
Goes away.
policy has been abandoned. And
And
so,
you know what's
and
funny
then
about
what?
that? And I'm glad you pointed that out. On Tuesday, I believe, Donald Trump says, on Monday, I'm sorry, he says, these tariffs are here to stay. They're never going to change. I'm not changing
Mm.
policy. On Tuesday, he backs away from the policy and drops all the tariffs down to 10% with the exception of China. Like, how do you plan for that, right? That's volatility on steroids. There's no way that you can plan around somebody who, as you point out, from day to day, it just changes. There's no way to know. And by the way, no tariffs on Russia. No tariffs on Russia.
Well, no, because it would be useless. There's no trade with Russia. Russia is completely impervious to all that. They're the complete autarkic state, self-sustained.
But
Maybe a
tariffs on
lesson to
Israel.
be.
That's the other funny part. I think you put like
Well,
17% tariffs on Israel.
yeah, they'll find a way to create an exception. They always do for those allies of ours.
Arno, man, thank you for this conversation. I really appreciate it. And again, you have my apologies for tomorrow. For yesterday, I'm sorry. Thank you for
No
this.
problem.
You have a
My
fantastic
pleasure.
day. Arnaud Develay, He is an author, political analyst, and international lawyer specializing in international criminal law. His latest book, Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and a Fracturing of American Political Consensus. By the way, do you have another book, or do you have, where can people find you? Just so people will know. I always ask this question.
Yes. You can find me on Twitter or X now, Invictus at Invictus Lex. And you can find some of my publications on 21st Century Wire.
Yeah, I put it below the other video, and I'll find the link and put it under this one also, man. Thank you for this. I really appreciate it.
You bet.
You
Have
have
a
a good
good
one.
one.
Be safe. All right. Arnaud, the man